Hello and welcome to One on One. I'm Vernon Ramazan. My guest today is Dr. Jyot Singh, the CEO of the EMA, who was on the program quite recently, but I've asked him to come on again to talk about the passing of Professor Julian Kenny. Dr. Singh, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
A very sad time for those who care about the environment in this country.
Very much so. We learned of Professor Kenny's passing yesterday afternoon. And I was in my office having discussions with my staff and was shocked by the news because there was no hint, of course, of Prof. Kenny being ill. And, I was sitting there reading an article in the newspaper that he had written, and published that very same day. So very, very surprising. And of course, after that surprise was registered a sense of sadness in terms of losing, as described by the Prime Minister, a luminary of Trinidad and Tobago, an icon in the environmental movement. So very, very sad to see Prof. Kenny leave us. 81 years old, had a very full life, contributed, I think, in a very, very significant way. I would say the foremost environmentalist coming out of Trinidad and Tobago. And he has left us a legacy of dedication, hard work, commitment, love for country. And I think a very good example to follow, but really, really sad to lose him.
And of course, you had worked with him up until quite recently as he was chairman of the EMA.
Yes, indeed. Indeed, Prof. Kenny was with us until the end of May, and served the EMA as chairman of the board of directors for 6 months, during which time I had the privilege of interacting with him almost on a daily basis and had the opportunity to discuss issues of a policy nature as well as operational issues at the Environmental Management Authority. His view really was to sort of reshape the EMA, to make it more effective and hard-hitting on the issues of relevance, not only at a high policy level, but also issues affecting people, man in the street, and what they were concerned about. And so, we spent many, many hours discussing how do we deal with the noise problem in Trinidad, which is something affecting everyone, I think, as well as, how do we deal with a higher policy issue in terms of effective waste management in Trinidad as well. So I benefited from that discussion. His contributions has resulted in a reshaping of the organization, and we're implementing many of the recommendations which were endorsed by the board during his very short 6 months at the Environmental Management Authority. During that time, he was very outspoken on many issues. I think Prof has a reputation for not being afraid to say what was on his mind.
He's very strong-minded.
Very, very strong individual. And I think, when you've had the opportunity to interact with him, you would realize that whatever he took time to say, he had considered very, very, very seriously as well. So anything that he said, you should take very seriously. And, of course, being party to his position taken against government taking such a long time to change back the EMA's regulation to bring back quarrying. Yeah. And, at the time when he had decided to resign, it was another surprise to me because our interactions were so very positive. Prof. Kenny was very vibrant at the organization, leading field trips to a variety of locations, engaged in, I think, his love, which was teaching, and doing that in such a very effective way through storytelling. A marvelous storyteller, because he had this wealth of information that you could go to any location in Trinidad, and he would tell you a story about the natural environment. Amazing. And then to hear that he had decided to resign, and I was very, very shocked at that time. And I said, Prof, you didn't give me an opportunity to talk to you about this decision. And he says, well, there was nothing really to talk about. I made a decision after considering it seriously. And I think it's time for me to move on and get involved in other things. And of course, I think it was made very public that the main concern was this issue of quarrying. Mm-hmm. And he said it took too long.
We're still waiting for a resolution to that issue, aren't we?
We are, but we have since had many discussions with government officials, including our own line minister, Dr. Munilal, who is convinced that it has to be reverted, it has to come back to the EMA in terms of the quarries below 150 acres. We have also now have the support of the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs. who has assumed the responsibility of that after Minister Sipasad Bechan handed it over, Minister Ramnarayan, who has said as well to me and to Dr. Munilal that he supports it. He feels that the EMA was set up to deal with that, so it should go back to the EMA. Now, Parliament has been prorogued, and we're hoping then that when Parliament is reconvened, this is something which will be given attention. And so we're hoping in the short term that this issue that Prof. Kenny felt so very strongly about will be resolved, and we can start addressing the heavy impacts being created by quarrying in Trinidad and Tobago.
I guess it could be argued that it was out of expediency that the previous administration changed the legislation because of the demand for the construction sector. But
Correct,
now it's really slowed down, so there isn't that huge demand anymore.
Yes, but there's a very strong lobby coming from the quarrying sector as well. I mean, they are a very well organized group of people. And I had the opportunity to interact with them recently. There was a seminar that I was asked to deliver a presentation on in terms of environmental regulations attended by quarry operators. And of course, one of the concerns that they have expressed is that, it takes a long time for them to get permission, and therefore, they cannot engage in operation. So, we need to look at some of those issues as well in terms of can we fast track or do it within a shorter period of time to ensure that the business is happening within reasonable time frames. But I think they also understood, and I made the point that that if you're operating a quarry and you're extracting aggregate and not doing anything after you've extracted that aggregate, you're not safeguarding the water, you're not safeguarding the trees, you're mindless with regards to the issues of wildlife. Then you're destroying the environment. And while you're building in one area in terms of buildings and roads and other things, you're destroying in another. And certainly that cannot be good for country. So we had that discussion.
Has any quarry operator ever returned a quarry after it's finished to its original?
There are very, very few examples. There are some.
They're supposed to, though, aren't they?
Well, they're supposed to, and certainly, when the EMA had jurisdiction, we would try to ensure that they did. But there are a number of abandoned quarries across Trinidad and Tobago where water is accumulating, where there's runoff, where there's contamination of our water sources, and where wildlife and forests have been disseminated. So, the attitude towards it has to change. One of the issues which I think we need to consider is whether the operators of quarry are sufficiently educated and sufficiently knowledgeable and financed to remediate areas that they have cleared the forest. If you think about an operator with a backhoe, an illegal quarrier, he goes in, clears a piece of land, digs out the aggregate, and goes off with it, and sells it for lower than market price, because he can do that. Now, if you've been asked to remediate a quarry after you have operated, clearly there's a cost to that. And the consideration is whether, financially they're able to do that through their operations. And it's something which has to be costed for.
But they weren't digging at the aggregate for charity, were they? They were making money off of it.
Yeah, well, this is it. And the question is whether they are selling it at the appropriate price, and whether, they can then, at the end of it, remediate the area and still make a profit. No, maybe that is entirely the case. Maybe they're just making excessive profits. But that needs to be looked at, because right now the environment is an externality to the issue of quarrying in a very, very significant and large way. And I think we need to look at it and work with them to ensure that they understand what needs to be done. And this is something that the EMA is committing to do as we move forward. And we're hoping that it will be reintroduced in the short term. We can, in fact, put our measures in place and work with the association as well as quarry operators to deal with the problem. But it's creating significant havoc in our forested areas, and we really need to move very quickly.
I suppose you must to some extent understand the frustration that Professor Kenny must have felt, though, given the circumstances or the delay in changing the legislation.
Yes, no, I understood his perspective, and I think he went on further to say that that it was really a license to destroy and disrupt when you gave these 17 licensed quarry operators during that period when the EMA had no jurisdiction and no say as to environmental issues. And so effectively you were licensing the destruction of the environment. And that is something that I knew he was very, very upset about. Even though we were waiting for the legislation to be reversed and the EMA's jurisdiction to be returned, I think he felt that was a move which was entirely against his own thinking and philosophy. Now, in that circumstance, the Ministry of Energy had indicated that they had included conditions in the license which would see to the environmental issues. But I've been trying to get those licenses and I have not been able to do so up to this point in time.
And you are the CEO of the EMA.
And I'm the CEO of the EMA. So, maybe we need to be a little bit more aggressive, or maybe we need to try and encourage a little more for us to get that information. Now, so we are moving forward, and I'm hoping that it will be done very quickly before any new arrangements are being made to quarry in Trinidad, because I really don't believe that we can accommodate further disruption. One of the things that is happening in Trinidad as well is that quarrying takes place wherever there's aggregate. We have no designation of areas for quarrying. And if you can so designate, then you can say, okay, we can tolerate a fair amount of damage if these are areas which have been studied and established as not having great potential to disrupt environmental conditions and circumstances. And this is another thing that we need to do. We really need to engage in land use planning.
I was just going to say, we're
Yes.
still waiting for that policy to come out,
No,
a
absolutely.
national land use policy.
Again, this is one of the areas that Prof. Kenny was very vocal on when he referred to the issue of planning and development. And of course, there was this planning and development bill, which Prof. Kenny was very vocal on, and advocating that this should be looked at critically because the current arrangements with regards to development planning, town and country planning legislation, he was saying was effectively non-existent and very ineffective. So this is a critical issue, is the issue of land use planning, and I know he was a strong voice in that area as well. So it's a combination of things that need to happen, and I think we need to have this sort of concerted and harmonized approach to dealing with some of the issues that we are facing in Trinidad and Tobago.
And it's interesting now that your line minister is also the Minister of Housing, because clearly that all falls into the need for land use planning policy, doesn't it?
Yes, and again, another good reason why we need to look at these issues. And while I think there are areas which are complementary in housing and the environment. And I've mentioned previously that Minister Munilal is very interested in greening housing. Great opportunity, because so much of the land actually is now being consumed for housing, that if we have the right approach in terms of design of houses, ensuring that the landscape is interfered with to the minimum, and therefore having minimum impact on the environment, that the issue of green housing can demonstrate that housing and the environment probably should be together. And he's committed to doing that, so there's opportunity for us to demonstrate that. But there are other areas as well that we need to ensure that the environment is linked. Certainly energy and the environment, very, very critical in Trinidad and Tobago and almost in every other sector, which is having an impact.
Now, in terms of Professor Kenny's approach to the environment, he really wasn't an armchair environmentalist, was he? He was very much out there all the time.
He was out there all the time, and it's amazing that Prof, at that time, 80 going on to 81, was leading expeditions out into the field. Prof. Kenny was very passionate about Nelson Island as well. It's another area that he felt that we needed to focus attention on converting into a true national heritage location and restored and protected. And he led an expedition down there with some people from the Chaguaramas Development Authority as well as the Environmental Management Authority, with a view to sharing information on Nelson Island, and walked us through the island and gave us a full tour at 81, up that hill. And I've driven by his passion clearly, and had a story for every part of the island because he understood and studied it so very thoroughly, and exposing the position that we needed to protect. Now, he went further to say that it should also be considered as a World Heritage Site. And he shared with me through one of our conversations that he said, I wish that we can reach that point where Nelson Island is restored. Nelson Island is designated as a heritage site before I pass on. He said, Joe, if we can do that, I would be a happy man. And it has not happened. We are moving in that direction.
That should be on your to-do list, I guess, at this point.
Certainly it is one of the things that I would really like to see happen, hopefully in the short term, really to honor him and to show, a recognition of his excitement, of his dedication to an area which has such tremendous historical value, as you would know.
Of course, yeah.
As well, a portal for immigrants coming into Trinidad at the time, indentured laborers.
It's our own little Ellis Island, isn't it?
It is pretty much so. And so he led an expedition there and then took us down to Maldestomac, which is on the north coast, where there was an illegal operation taking place. Very precarious drive down. Prof was in the van with us, walking down the hill to the site, and exclamations of dissatisfaction with that development, and of course sharing with us why we needed to take forceful action, which we did, and indeed the Environmental Commission stopped that. It is one of the circumstances where an order was issued, a stop order was issued, which cancelled it, and now there are tremendous fees and fines to be paid, as well as restoration, driven by Prof. Kenny, and his activity and his very, very focused activism with regards to getting out there. So not sitting in an office, not talking about the environment, but very active in terms of being out there and teaching, sharing, informing, and really pushing for these things to happen.
I mean, it's very easy when somebody's in an organization like the EMA to sort of look at everything academically, isn't it? But when you're actually out there seeing what the impact really means for communities and for the natural environment, it's a very different scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you can, like everything else, you can divide into academic and then applied issues. And, Prof was scanning both of those areas, a well-renowned academic in his field, a teacher and professor for many years at the University of the West Indies. And, I think one of his legacy as well is certainly the amount of students he generated, including myself. I was one of Prof. Kenny's students at the University of the West Indies. So as far as academia goes and his love for science, research, and teaching, he excelled. And again, I think this is one of his legacy. And then, of course, shifting to the issue of applied science and all his knowledge and research and science information, using that now to really to determine how we should move forward as a country in terms of environmental legislation and regulations. Very much involved at the time that the Environmental Management Act was just a bill, and contributing to that discussion as well, utilizing his knowledge as to how it should be shaped and what sort of subsidiary legislation should be formulated going forward. So, all in all, such a remarkable personality, very concerned about communities, as you pointed out, not only thinking that there were larger policy issues to deal with, but what were the issues that the average person was concerned about. And he always made a point to say that to me, that while we needed to look at these broader issues, we need to look at the simpler issues, the things that the people were complaining that the EMA was not doing. Some of it outside of our jurisdiction, for example, cleaning of drains and cutting of grass, certainly outside of our jurisdiction, and people call us and expect us to do that. That is something that the Public Health Department and regional corporations would do. But for example, in the area of noise, and communities being very concerned that their rest was being disturbed and enjoyment of property was being disturbed by noise. And he says, we need to do something about that. And was making efforts to formulate advisory committees and get professionals involved, in the area of noise to join the EMA effort. So, I think Prof managed to bridge and to work on both the academic side as well as the side dealing with issues of the environment that was affecting the average person.
Which made him unusual in that sense, because he was able to relate to the everyday person as much as he was able to relate on a highly academic level. He could write in the newspaper a column that anybody could read and enjoy, in very simple, relatable English, and also write academic treatises as well.
Exactly, and he has volumes of publications in science journals. He has shared that with many of the libraries in Trinidad and Tobago. He has shared his writings with Nehurst. He has information in the National Library as well, NALIS. And he gave the EMA, a large volume of his writings to put in our library and to make available to anyone who was interested in it. Prof. Kenny actually was sharing with me that he wanted to have one of his books which deals with the biodiversity of Trinidad and Tobago made available online, and he said his interest is not financial. His interest was simply to get the information out so that people can utilize it. And this was a book written specifically for sixth form students, and was being sold by the publisher at cost, really, and maybe at $300 or so. And Prof said that that's making it a little bit difficult for the average person to access. So could you put my book online? And told his publishers, give the EMA permission to put it online. I don't want any money out of it. And that is the character that we are talking about, Professor Kenny, who, as you said...
But he was able, obviously, to embrace the modern world as well, of online.
Very much in tune with that. And, when you meet some of the professionals who, in his age group, who didn't know anything about a computer, Prof was very well versed with Facebook and Twitter and getting things online. A remarkable, extremely intelligent person, At my stage in my career now, CEO of the EMA, and of course, hopefully a recognition of my own achievements and capability to lead a national organization.
Although you have led international organization before that, we should point out. I mean,
yes, no, of course. But I felt very often like a student in the company of Professor Kenny, because his knowledge was so wide and so broad. And so it was a learning experience. I benefited tremendously during the time that he spent at the EMA, the 6 months that he spent at the EMA. And I said to him, Prof, you are a godsend. I mean, we could not hope to have a better chairman of the EMA. And every member of staff felt the very same way, and he took time to actually teach. So while, yes, he was involved in this higher level writing in terms of academia and refereed publications in journals, Prof also wrote very simply. And in fact, he had said to me that one of his ambition was to be able to write so that the average person can appreciate the environmental issues that we are facing. Keep in mind that his interest was not only environment. I mean, he is well renowned for his work in the environment. But he spent time commentating on broader issues as well. As you know, he was an independent senator.
Of course, yeah.
And debated many bills which came forward for consideration, and made significant contributions in that regard as well. But very intent on being able to be understood in terms of his view, and ensuring that the average person understood this issue of environment, which can be sometimes an esoteric issue.
It seems that way to many people.
Yeah, to the average person, you talk about some of the issues such as natural resource management. And put in simple terms, it's really just managing natural systems such as forests and wetlands and mangroves and seagrass beds. So, he was able to communicate to the average person, I think, remarkable talent.
It would be sad to think that he's part of a vanishing breed of people who actually believe in national service.
Well, again, this is one of the things which I have tried to encourage. I think volunteering is a very important thing. Nowadays, you find less and less people volunteering. In Trinidad and Tobago, you're almost paid for everything that you do. And I think that these groups where you can actually say, okay, I want to devote a Saturday or an afternoon to engaging non-governmental organizations, spending time really for nation building. I want to devote my time. It's only things that we need to consider nationally, the issue of national service, and setting up some formal mechanism to make that happen. In other countries, it is a requirement. And I do believe that it is something that is fading because people look for compensation for whatever they do. Rather than recognizing that whatever effort you can make to contribute to national development is something that you're doing for yourself and you really don't need to be paid for it. He devoted so much of his time to national service that Trinidad and Tobago has really lost one of our true icons in his passing. Now, Prof. Kenny is 81 years old, and when you reflect on the volume of work that he has done, the amount of work that he has engaged in terms of nation building, you would quickly realize that he had a very full life. But even at 81, losing somebody like Prof. Kenny is such a traumatic loss for country because, as you said, not too many people are there, very, very, very much a breed of individuals who are vanishing very quickly. And we can only aspire to reach the heights that he did.
Because so many people nowadays live half lives, really, when you think about it. And he really lived his life fully, didn't he?
Entirely so. And
perhaps
enjoyed
more than
everything.
fully to some extent, because he always seemed to be doing something.
He always did. And you know what is remarkable, Vernon, is that he got pleasure out of what he did. And I think this is one of the drivers. Some people do think, and they do it with a bit of a grin on their face.
Like a chore,
yeah, it's a chore. They really don't want to do it, but we'll do it because we have to do it. Prof. Kenny enjoyed his work. It was so exciting to see him out, and I refer back again to Nelson Island. And Prof. Kenny would demonstrate, the characteristic of a very, very young boy, laughing, and his eyes would light up when he would speak about these things. And, he simply had a dedication to something of nation building, a passion for the environment. And if you can bottle that and make that available to some people, I think we would have an amazing country.
Something for all of us to aspire to when you think about it.
Very much so. And certainly I myself, I feel very passionate about the environment. I see Prof. Kenny.
Well, you obviously believe in national service yourself. You chose,
Oh,
you chose to come
absolutely.
back here and take up the mantle.
Yes,
to head the
I
EMA.
do. I'm
Yeah.
very committed to that. I'm very committed to nation building. I worked regionally and internationally, as you,
With the IFAW.
as you know,
yeah.
Vernon. But I think you need to come back and serve country. And I think he was an exemplar. He was an exemplar in that regard. Someone who showed how you should really serve country and dedicated his life to doing so. And I think, Trinidad and Tobago is certainly better for having a true son of the soil in Professor Kenny.
We only have a couple of minutes left, Dr. Singh. I want to ask you, in terms of his legacy and where the environment in this country is right now, did Professor Kenny make a difference because of his contributions over his lifetime?
Without a doubt. I think a remarkable contribution. And one I think which is probably the most significant is his love for teaching. And in so teaching and in his writing, he has created a cadre of young people, and people like myself who are not so young anymore, who is following in his footsteps. And, to me, from my position, I think that is one of the most remarkable and lasting things that you can do. Because you can put up buildings and write documents. But if you have not created minds, and if you have not created passion, and if you have not created commitment to country, then I think those things diminish in that light. So I think he has managed during his many, many years, over 25 years of lecturing at the University of the West Indies and continuing to convey information after that. I think he has left a legacy in that regard. Certainly with regards to the legislation that he was involved in formulating, including the Environmental Management Act, there is that legislation. And certainly his voice as to how things should be done in the context of sustainable development. Because Prof. Kenny, although he loved the environment, was never one to say we needed to protect the environment and forget about country building and nation building in the context of economic development. I think he was one of those who believed in sustainable development, that we had to protect the environment while allowing our country to grow so that we can enjoy a better standard of living. And I think this is one of the messages as well that I think people need to be reminded of, because you speak of him as an environmentalist, but certainly I think his message was also protect the environment, but let us try and facilitate development as well. So I think many areas that he has left a legacy. Nelson Island, I think, worthy of special mention, and his passion for having that designated as a World Heritage Site, and it's something that I think we should ensure happens.
Well, Dr. Jyote Singh, who yourself is part of the legacy of Professor Julian Kelly, and thank you so much for being on the program. A pleasure as always having you here.
A pleasure to come and
Thank
talk
you,
about Prof.
and
Kenny.
even at a sad time, thank you.
Thank
You've been
you.
watching One on One. Join us again tomorrow for another edition.